Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you kindly for turning up. I do appreciate it. And I'm eternally grateful for that very fact. My macro thoughts start with the dollar. The dollar index has traded at highs not seen since September 2003. And I've been talking about this for quite a while. And on the 12th of January, I said I think the Fed is just one headline economic print away from raising interest rates. A rate hike even as small as 0.25% will be the catalyst for a renewed surge in the dollar. And then I said the dollar index is headed a lot higher by the dollar. Indeed it is. Williams of the Fed says the Fed should not be patient on rate hikes. I think 1/4 point mid-year is a done deal. If you haven't read my other pieces, 9th of February I spoke about the king dollar. And on the 29th of September last year, I put a big push and I said, small window for sharks as the dollar rises. Home Thoughts, Wild Junket, who I follow on Twitter, but she's always on a wild junket, retweeted 8 of my favorite sunsets around the world by Backpacker Boy. It really is a wonderful sunset. I've been stuck on Marvin Gaye. I'm going to put up an image of him, which really shows how beautiful he was. His voice was so amazing. And I discovered this song I'd never heard before called I Want You. And it's so beautiful. Do play it. If you've come all this way, go and play it. Then tell me how good it is. And I was thinking to myself, this is the kind of song you play someone at the end of an evening, obviously playing it to someone you felt strong sentiments for, and I think it would be game over when deployed, almost as game over as Heinrich Heine, Mr. Stokes, my German teacher at Westminster, taught me. And that was Bin ich so in Lieb mit dich, als hätte ich deine Blut getrunken, which translated reads, I am so in love with you, it's as if I've drunk your blood, said with the right level of earnestness. It has the advantage of intensity, urgency, and frisson. Anyway, I've digressed. And then from Heinrich Heine, I came across this quote, wherever they burn books, they will also, in the end, burn human beings. Heinrich Heine. Political reflections, I'll start with a tweet by John Kerry, covered lots of ground with counterparts from Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, as follow-up to Munich meeting. Increasingly, Iran looks like a shoo-in. This was something I wrote about in 2012, you no doubt will remember. PM Nawaz Sharif was on a 3-day official visit to Saudi Arabia on the invitation of King Salman. I'll put up the photograph. The Assistant Secretary Newland testified on Ukraine before the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and I'll put up the image that was tweeted with that. And then I saw the US mission to NATO tweet this, US Army Rotational Aviation Unit and Black Hawk ELOs will support Operation Atlantic Resolve. MH370 search could be scaled back, suggests Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott. That's because they're looking for it in the wrong place. As I said on the 25th of August, the signal announcing this new arrhythmic normal in the world today, call it what you will, was in some ways the disappearance of MH370. And the way the story seemingly turned on and off. Lord Rothschild has said investors face a geopolitical situation as dangerous as any since World War II. And this is this extraordinary confluence and intersection point of geopolitics, currency, oil warfare. It's a very, very interesting world that we live in now. He used his chairman's statement in the Trust's 2014 annual report to outline his concerns, saying that on top of a difficult economic background, investors face a geopolitical situation perhaps as dangerous as any we have faced since World War II. This is the Borowitz report, and he's always tongue-in-cheek. House Speaker Boehner has scheduled a joint session of Congress in April to hear an address by Kevin Laggett, a man who is on record as having hated President Obama in high school. Boner, who personally extended the invitation to Lagat, said that he did not consult with the president before contacting his high school nemesis. This has nothing to do with the president, Boner said. Many of us in Congress are very interested in what Mr. Lagat has to say. According to a source who attended high school with both men, Lagat's antipathy for the president began when Obama was chosen over him for the post of sports editor on the school newspaper. Kevin has totally despised him ever since, the source said. Reached in Honolulu, where he works as an assistant manager at Applebee's, Lagat said that his speech to Congress would steer clear of personal issues between him and Obama. I'm going to leave that stuff at the door, he said. I'm just going to talk about the job he's doing as president, which he's screwing up pretty bad, in my opinion. At the White House, the president responded testily when asked if he intended to watch Lagat's speech. Kevin is a tool, he said. Matteo Renzi has appealed to Putin for Russia's help in stabilizing Libya. That's an interesting call, isn't it? Currency markets, the euro has now conclusively dropped below 110. The figure last trading at 109.71. Dollar index when I came in was at 96.33, but no doubt it's a lot higher now. Japanese yen 119.99 when I walked in, now 120.12. But the yen is not such, I'm not so convinced that the yen will move that much. I think it's a euro-dollar move, and then the higher yielders as well. Pound has dropped below 152. Aussie 0.7809 must be lower. India rupee 62.342. South Korean 110.9826. The Rial over 3, my target is now 4. Egyptian pound 763. And the rand, when I walked in this morning, 11.81, but we know it's going towards 12. The dollar index is at a level not seen since 2003. I'll put up a 3-month chart for you to look at. Euro dollar now down below 110 and 0.93 calling, I'm afraid. This is the lowest for the euro since September 2003. In January, I had a parity objective that I've adjusted now to 0.93. I wrote about Mario Draghi, and I was thinking to myself yesterday, I was listening to Mario Draghi on Bloomberg TV. I've got this extraordinary internet, and 8 years ago, I had to spend more than $7,000 to get a 32-bit connection. And that is a revolution, frankly. But anyway, beside the point, let's get back to Super Mario, whom I listen to and whom I admire greatly, because I think it's like herding cats in the European Union. And he does a mighty fine job. And he said some time ago, we designed a parkour, a road. And on that note, I'll tell you about parkour, which is navigating the world by leaps and bounds. Parkour is a made-up word, cousin to the French parcours, which means route, quasi-commando system of leaps, vaults, rolls, and landings designed to help a person avoid or surmount whatever lies in his path. A vocabulary that is to be employed in finding one's way among obstacles. Parkour goes over walls, not around them. It takes the stair rail, not the stairs. Spread mainly by videos on the internet, it has been embraced in Europe and the United States by thrill seekers and martial arts adepts who regard it as part extreme sport. Its founder would like to see it included in the Olympics and part grueling meditative pursuit. Movies like its daredevil qualities. The movements are performed at a dead run. The more efficient and fluid the path they define, the more difficult and harrowing the terrain they cross, the more elegant the performance is considered by the discipline's practitioners. Put up a photograph of parkour for you to have a look at. A young man who practices parkour, i.e. Draghi, is called a traceur. A woman is a traceur. So I'll put up a photograph of Draghi. And look at this image that Nanex LLC tweeted, long-term German bonds versus Buxel. And it was down 1% before he started speaking, and then massive rally over an 80-minute period to plus 1.25%, all around his comments about what they could buy and what they couldn't buy. And essentially he said he could buy bonds with negative yields up to 0.2, and that essentially put the long end into play big time. Moving on to commodity markets, the global food price index has fallen to a 55-month low, and that's a good thing. Gold, 6 months, I'll put up a 6-month chart. We're now below 1200, last trading at 1195. You know, I think it could print a triple-digit number this year. Crude oil, $51. I think it's yet to print 2015 lows. I think the latest dilemma is that storage tanks are near capacity, and therefore prices have to go lower. I think it's going to tank again. Meconomy tweeted, here's why Brazil's borrowing costs are at a 6-year high of 12.75%, year-over-year inflation at 7.36% in February. I'll put up a 1-year chart of the real. I think it's going to fall. I'll put up a photograph of one of my favorite architects of all time, Brazilian Oscar Niemeyer. Reuters has got an exclusive report that the African Union wants to bar South Sudan leaders from the transition, much anticipated African Union inquiry, and this is probably the best report I've ever seen from them, calls for South Sudan's president and his rival to be barred from a transitional government, and for the oil-producing country to effectively be placed under AU control, say sources in a draft of the report. The recommendations are directly at odds with the peace deal being negotiated that would retain Salva Kiir as president and appoint rebel leader Riek Machar as deputy. The inquiry, led by former Nigerian President Obasanjo, holds Kiir and Machar responsible for the political collapse in December 2013 and the organized massacres and the large-scale violence that followed. Mr. Bazabose, who I follow on Twitter as well, is talking about how they're going to intern or exhume the remains of Kampaore, and this is Sankara, in order to establish what exactly happened. South African oil shares surged yesterday 0.75% to set a fresh record closing high, and it's up 7.18% year to date. Put up a photograph of the sunset in Johannesburg. Standard Bank, big driver of that move, rose as much as 6.6%, biggest intraday advance since April 2009. And this is the interesting, it was a strong number. Customer deposits in Africa, and Standard Bank operates in 19 countries outside South Africa, jumped by 22% in 2014. That's a strong signal. Interesting points were made, but this is what I found interesting about the oil and gas, and saying if oil stays around where it is now, it's manageable. If it goes much lower, like $30 a barrel, it gets complicated. That's Kruger, the co-CEO. Dollar rand, you know, I've been going on about 12 for eternity. We're going there. Egyptian pound, you know, it's softened quite a lot this year as they've tried to narrow the differential between the official and the unofficial rate. On the 10th of November, the EGX is up 7.31% year to date, up 1.21% yesterday. Turning to Nigeria, on the 10th of November, I wrote, you know, turning to the markets in Africa, the Nigerian Naira and the All Share Index have been wagadooed by the collapse in the price of oil. The Naira has slumped almost 20% over the past 6 months. It's improved off a record low of 206. But when you compare it with other oil-producing nations, the declines are stark. No other major exporter's currency is down as much in 2015 as Nigeria's. Nigeria's very high risk now, says a fellow at Aberdeen. They burnt through $5 billion of international reserves in the fourth quarter. Now they've imposed restrictions, throttled trading in the currency market. We used to trade $300 million, is now trading as little as $10 million a day. The economy has been downshifted. The IMF cut its 2015 forecast to 4.8%. That's versus an average of 9.9% over more than 10 years. The all share is down 12.14%. I'm not bullish because I expect a further breakdown in the price of oil. Ghana Stock Exchange down 3.87% year to date, but obviously the IMF stepping in is a positive sign. Interesting article in the drinks business about Africa being the next great beer frontier. Research by Canadian into the global beer market puts Africa on the top spot, outstripping growth in the expanding Asian and Latin American markets, which are projected to grow 4% and 3% respectively. South Africa is by far the biggest market in Africa, with an expected total volume of 30.9 million hectolitres in 2014, followed by Nigeria with 15.2 million, half the size, and Angola with 12.8 million. They drink a lot, don't they, in Angola? Afren's founder eyes China for a stable capital structure. With a different strategy and reinvigorated management, there is a chance to pull the phoenix from the ashes. So I'm leading an effort to reinvent the company as a new China-Africa platform. Well, they defaulted on Wednesday on their 2016 bonds and are negotiating a rescue deal with bondholders, which will surely completely dilute shareholders. I take you back to the innovation forum that I attended earlier this week, and I like this image, which said, "While the world is not looking, a pulsating, dynamic, and innovative new Kenya is emerging." I'll put up that image. Barclays Bank reported full-year results, profit after tax up 10.03%. Share price up big, and that's because they hiked the dividend 42.85%. Total assets up 9.24%, so, I found that interesting. Operating expenses down year on year, marginally, but that's pretty creditable. Profit after tax up 10.03%, full year earnings up 10%, massive dividend hike of 42.85%. That's going to keep the share humming to the upside. And I think, the network effect of the One Barclays strategy is going to kick in effectively for Barclays. So it looks an attractively priced share at a P of 10.58. Bamburi Cement reported full year profit after tax increased 6.26%. That's snapping 3 consecutive years of declines in profit. Turnover up 5.831%. Profit after tax up 6.26%. What's interesting about Bamburi, if I'm not mistaken, is the second year they've done that. They've paid out 6 shillings of interim dividend. They're paying out another 6 shillings of final dividend. The full year EPS is 9 shillings 80, so they're paying more out than they're actually earning. But better than expected results. Mumia Sugar reported first half results, revenues down 62.499%. Pretty extraordinary loss. Earnings per share down 400% from 0.19 loss to 0.95. Look, we all knew it was bad. These results might prove the catalyst for dealing with the situation lock, stock and barrel. In some ways, the share price has this news built into it. Nairobi All Share up 5.96% year to date, but has corrected 2.946% of a record high reached on the 25th of February. NSE 20 up 5.88% year to date, has corrected 88 points off a 7-year high reached just this Monday. Good report on Reuters about a heroin trade grows as sting in Kenya. Put up a photograph of President Jomo Kenyatta opening the KICC on the 11th of September 1973, and then I'll put up a photograph of the KICC that I took when I was there earlier in the week. World Bank obviously very bullish about Kenya, projecting 6% growth this year, 6.6% next year, and 7% in 2017. Securities exchanges had 2 very, very high octane sessions. We've actually traded $36.912 million worth of shares in the last 2 sessions. But it's been on a profit-taking trend. Safaricom is a standout. Nation Media, 2-year lows today. Delayed reaction to that standoff digital migration. Other than that, EABL looks as if it's spaced out. And on balance, I think this is profit taking after a very, very strong thrust that we had in the first 8 weeks of the year. Once again, thank you.